OpenAI launches new models right before Google announces its big AI initiatives for the year, and rumors swirl around Siri getting an upgrade. So are we getting closer to a world envisioned by Iron Man or her? Also, a CEO reveals how his company almost fell prey to a deepfake scam, and more trends indicate that people probably basically just don't want to work anymore. We're going to talk about these stories and more on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. The guy behind the monitors is Chris. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And joining us again as guest co-host for this episode is Chris Shaw. He is the CMO for NTT Research and no relation to me or to Chris. Hello, sir.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
It's still very awkward in terms of figuring out who to address as Chris 1 or Chris 2. All right, let's jump into the week's news. We are recording on a Tuesday, so we have not gotten to the Google news yet, but we're all assuming that they're going to be announcing a lot of AI stuff. OpenAI announced earlier in the week that they have a new AI model. It's called GPT-4o. So they've added a zero to, or an O, a letter O, not a zero. And then they've also got a new desktop version of ChatGPT. With the new interface, basically it's an effort to expand the use of its chatbot. The update brings GPT-4 to everyone, including OpenAI's free users. And this is according to technology chief Mira Murati in a live streamed event. She did this as well. Basically, from what I've been seeing on the videos, it does feel like a Siri-like discussion that you can have with ChatGPT now. They use the robotic voices. You can talk on your phone. It answers. There's some translation parts where you can speak in a language and it'll translate for you. But most of what I'm seeing is also they're talking about that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, where the guy falls in love with the AI, with the Siri-like AI. Because if you watch any of the videos, it's a little creepy, but it's a conversation back and forth. So you don't have to type in your questions anymore with the AI. You can now use your voice and have a conversation. So all of
the assistants are going to integrate this.
So OpenAI researcher Mark Chen said the model is able to, quote, perceive your emotion, which means that the model can also handle users interrupting it. Because I'm often interrupting my AI.
Yeah. So receive emotion, are they talking about like receiving the tone in your voice?
Yeah, either that or your facial expressions too.
Right.
So it can say like, oh, Keith, you looked really sad today. What can I help you with? Nothing?
Fine, really. No problem. I'm okay.
Hey, ChatGPT-4, can you take this Turing test?
Well, I'm sure that, yeah. The company plans to test voice mode in the coming weeks with early access for paid subscribers to ChatGPT Plus. Hey, that's me. Also, this new model can respond to users' audio prompts in as little as 232 milliseconds with an average of 320 milliseconds, which is similar to human response time in a conversation. There was a demonstration, which again, you have to kind of watch this video, where the model was able to tell a bedtime story and ask it to change the tone of its voice to be either more dramatic or robotic. And I guess he also asked it to sing the story. So I think what'll happen here, it does seem like it's another magic trick from OpenAI. It seems like another step towards that future where we are talking to AI assistants. I hope that people don't fall in love with it the way that they did in the movies. I hope it's more like Jarvis, where like he's doing stuff, the AI is doing stuff for you rather than just having a conversation with a lonely person. But like what, and again, I can only imagine the bad stuff that will be happening with this at some point, because there's good stuff, but then I always know that there's going to be bad stuff coming. So Chris, what are your thoughts on
I think it's sort of the logical next step. Wait, are you talking to me?
Yeah, Chris Shaw.
Yeah, I think it's a logical next step, right? You're to get to the sort of voice command and voice conversation. You're doing it with, obviously with type, and you go to what Siri was, or Hey Google kind of stuff, right? Which is just a single question, get an answer either from the web. This is just a logical next step. I think I can see it being a better way of using AI, I guess. If you're going to have a virtual assistant, have one that, you can sort of engage a little bit more in than just give a command. Because the frustration with something like a Siri is, hey, Siri, do this thing.
Right.
And and there goes my Siri on my phone responding, do this thing. And then there's an answer like, here it is on the web, or I'm not quite sure. And then you're stuck with having to give another command as opposed to a back and forth. So from that standpoint, it seems like a really smart idea. And I think a very effective way to use, a chatbot more than typing. I like that.
I think that's what everybody assumed the first time that the text-based ChatGPT came out. Everyone kept thinking, when is Apple going to do something with Siri, and when is Amazon going to do something with its Alexa / Echo, devices? And I still haven't seen anything. I think Amazon at one point was trying to charge people to try a beta version of an AI-based Alexa, and I don't think a lot of people jumped at that chance.
I think it makes a lot of sense for Siri, and I suppose for Alexa in some way, but it is very much a command-based system. I'm sure they'll do it because everyone's going to end up doing the same thing. But if you think about it, Alexa is supposed to turn on the lights, do this, buy something. It's less of an assistant on discovery, I guess. It feels, at least to me, when I think of how Alexa is used.
Yeah. Well, again, with this system, I think what I want from a ChatGPT AI assistant is not necessarily for it to do stuff. I just want it to answer a question that I have instantly and immediately based on, usually it's a news thing. It's like, hey, who won the Red Sox game last night? Rather than having me go into the phone and, bring up my sports app and then look through the scores to see what the score was if I missed the game or if I hadn't been listening to news.
I think the difference for me is that I wanted to be able to answer those questions, but I get frustrated if I ask the question of, again, let's say of Siri, and I ask it and then it doesn't have an answer. And rather than saying, giving me the beginning of an answer or a conversation. So just like we're talking right now, you can get there in a few steps. If you don't have it exactly right the first time, it's stuck. So I think it'll be easier to get to the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, what'll be interesting is to see that next wave as once they release it, then I'm sure there's going to be a ton of media outlets that will go and show you different things that are happening. And then the good and the bad. But can you think of any bad, again, is it, do we get into this deep fake area where, I don't know. I haven't really thought about ways to trick the system or ways to get it to do something that it's not intended to do. Because obviously OpenAI must have been thinking about some of these things.
I guess it would have to be in the questions that are asked of it. Maybe if you're trying to get personal information about somebody, or it's going to come from the person asking the questions, I guess, is where it gets bad. And then there's just the idea of like, okay, great, we can have this quick conversation to find out if the Red Sox won or lost. But how really important is that? It's like it's
saving me about a minute of opening my phone, looking for the app, and
save some time. Yeah. But I think it's going to be interesting. This is just sort of a functional step, and then, like you said, see where it goes and see if it does get people do some odd things with it, or if it just becomes super handy, right?
Yeah,
but it does have a conversation like we're having with a bot.
Yeah, and it does feel like while it can do this conversation you can have a conversation back and forth and give you information. The next step is that whole Jarvis thing where it's like, okay, Jarvis, I'm home, turn on the lights. Or Jarvis, calculate this thing for me. I did see something where you could point your phone at something like at a math equation and it'll solve the math equation for you. I can only imagine the teachers that are rolling their eyes now for, algebra homework.
I did figure out a way that could get kind of dangerous or creepy. Is that think about like going into a YouTube rabbit hole, right? Where someone's on YouTube, they watch a video and they just keep going down that rabbit hole. Imagine that same thing, only the rabbit hole is with the bot going back and forth, right? That because it answers something in a way that's intriguing to you and you ask, and then because it draws on some part of whatever it's pulling from, and you just go down this conversational conspiracy rabbit hole.
Well, and then at that point, it becomes an AI hallucination that could happen too.
Exactly. Which is kind of the YouTube rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
So that's their danger.
Well, I also think there's that danger of people that will fall in love with one of these things. This was a trope. 10 years ago when Siri came out, there was an episode of The Big Bang Theory where one of the characters was falling in love. And you've had that movie. You got the movie with Scarlett Johansson. So these themes have been looked at for 10, 15 years now. And that was with Siri, which was not a very good one.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could see, again, like that rabbit hole one way or the other.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole could just be you're starting to fall in love, or you think it's your friend and it's real. And then you start listening to its advice. And if it does hallucinate, you never know where it could go, right? Because it's just pulling from all this information.
Right.
I mean,
and if you go, and again, I know you don't do this, Chris, because I don't know, you don't go into the dark web areas. Either Chris does this, but there are stories of some YouTube influencers, the ones that have certain pages on certain sites that have created digital girlfriend types of apps. I'm sure that they're already experiencing that. You got a lot of lonely people out there that are paying certain people, and to have conversations with them. And then if they might add visuals at some point, and you can imagine where that's going to go. That's another dangerous area that I think that this could happen.
Here's the new business idea for it is it's going to, what is it? BetterHelp or one of those like online therapy things.
Yeah.
They're going to do something with a bot where it's going to become your therapist.
Ugh. Would you take advice from an AI therapist at this point?
But what if you didn't know?
I don't know. Well, I think from an ethical standpoint, you would have to.
Yeah.
You would have to kind of display like this is meant for entertainment purposes only, or this, please don't take the advice from the AI therapist, I guess.
I mean, I think people are kind of doing that, not literally with the BetterHelp. I'm not going to.
Yeah. We're not saying that they do that.
That's real people, but I think there is the world of online therapy videos and influencers that people just search up and they're just fed information, right? This is whatever. I mean, whether it's TikTok or YouTube or some article, I mean, there's so much self-diagnosis via what they're researching. Couldn't they do the same thing here? Hey, Siri, tell me a little bit about ADHD. I think I have this. Here's my diagnosis. Or not Siri, but whatever.
Hey, Siri or whoever, look at this mole that's on my arm.
Yeah.
Is this dangerous or not? And obviously, if they're being responsible, they would go, you should go see a doctor. And you shouldn't be asking me. But again, that could go down a rabbit hole that I don't think that the world might be ready for at this point.
And I think that is the big fear. It's the rabbit hole, right? It's the rabbit hole combined with hallucinations that could take you to just very strange places. Right.
From a news perspective, I love this because now, like, I'm going to be on the lookout for all sorts of stories of crazy things that people are going to do with this thing. But okay. But at least I can get the Red Sox score faster, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Director Chris, any other thoughts from you on this?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little scary, but I can see its uses.
Oh, so I want to get back to that movie, Her, which I have never heard of, but I know about it. I've never seen it, but I have heard about it, and obviously people reference this thing. There was a part in this story which was I just want to read you this from The Verge. So the assistant's voice response bore a striking resemblance to the character Scarlett Johansson plays in the movie Her, where a man forms a relationship with a sophisticated AI assistant. After the event, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman cryptically posted just one word on Twitter/X, Her. He has also expressed that Her is his favorite movie. The film explores themes of loneliness and human-AI relationships. It seems unlikely that director Spike Jonze intended for the world to precisely replicate that sense of robotic isolation. So it's like you create a movie where you're trying to make a commentary about human isolation, and people that love the movie take it the wrong way and said, we should invent this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think we're trying to recreate those environments in the movies.
Yeah. It's like if someone went to the movies and saw the Terminator movies, Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then said, you know what would be a great idea? Actually building those Terminator-type robots.
Like, let's actually build Skynet.
Yes.
We need to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's cool. That was a good movie.
Yeah, I know that science fiction often is the thing that inspires, actual scientists to think of new ideas. But it's not literally do the same thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think a few months ago we were talking about scientists that were trying to actually recreate a woolly mammoth, which made me think of Jurassic Park. And maybe we shouldn't take the DNA of woolly mammoth, an extinct beast, and bring it back to life. More and more, I side with Jeff Goldblum's character in that movie more than I thought I did when I first saw it.
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to Apple and Siri, there was a news report last week that said Apple is preparing to unveil a major revamp to Siri at the Worldwide Developer Conference in June. This was reported by the New York Times. The report says the new version of Siri will be powered by generative AI, allowing it to be more conversational and understand more types of requests. Rather than focus on open-ended results like a loquacious ChatGPT clone, Apple is using the new foundations to make Siri better at handling tasks like setting timers, creating reminders, and more. So
see, the problem with this is it's not going to be generative AI. We all know this. It's going to be Apple AI. It's going to be the best AI ever created. Nobody else has done the equivalent. Like they're going to have the best AI ever.
Well, so there's been reports about there's been rumors about who is Apple partnering with for their AI. I've seen reports that they're doing it with OpenAI. I've seen reports that they're doing it with Google, which I think would probably be a mistake. But so there are and they might be developing it internally. I think Siri and Apple will have to add those tasks. I think if they just came out with a question and answer bot, like you and I were talking about earlier, Chris, that's not going to make a move. Like that's not going to move the needle. But if and again, in typical Apple fashion, what they'll do is like the new Siri will be able to take all of the other Apple devices that you have and make them better. So it only becomes better if I have my MacBook here and my watch and my Vision Pro and all this other stuff. Otherwise, it's just kind of an app, right?
Well, when you leave your, I don't know if you use Apple devices, but if you leave your house, let's say you just have your phone and you've got it, and it says you get the little thing. It's going to be it's like, Chris, you left your computer. Chris, come back. And then you'll go into another room and the computer will start talking to you because you left your phone.
But
it does that.
That thing never works. I don't know why. So I have it enabled on this laptop. Okay. The one that you're seeing on the show. And every time I think it's geo-fenced with the place where it last logs in. And it doesn't necessarily, so it just has this little geofence.
Yes.
And so I put the laptop in my trunk when I leave to go home, and within and then I connect my phone to CarPlay. And so within about 300 feet, I get the notification that says you've left your computer, at work, because it goes beyond the geofence, and it does the same thing at my house whenever I'm leaving. And that is totally useless to me because I wanted to tell me when I actually leave the computer on the desk, rather than this fake false alarm that I'm getting. And I don't know. And again, I haven't been so frustrated by this where I've gone to try to figure it out. But yeah, that would be
you've just given an Apple a reason for Siri to exist with an AI just to fix that problem. Wait.
Yes, but it would be telling me that I've left when the laptop's in my trunk and in my backpack. So it's telling me
because you've disconnected. It has to. It's not until you get home and then open it back up,
right?
That it knows, right?
And then Apple would probably tell me, well, you need to buy an AirTag and then put an AirTag on this computer.
Yeah, there you go.
And then it'll always be, as long as it's still connected to my phone or my watch or whatever, then it won't give me that alert until until it's gone a certain number of feet.
So the use case, what we're deciding is the use case for the new Siri AI is it's going to connect all the devices and get you to buy AirTags.
Oh, I'm completely convinced that the new Siri will be one of those integrations, and like Chris earlier said, it'll be the greatest invention of AI since ever. And I believe, I don't know if in June, if they announce this, whether they'll announce an integration with a partnership with OpenAI or one of these others, but I know that they'll also then talk about how they've developed all this stuff internally because Apple creates the world's best products.
Yeah, they're not research, they're pure products. So they're going to take like the work that was done at OpenAI or Google and then put it in, and suddenly they'll say, you're right, they'll have the best. And it won't be called AI, it'll be called something else.
It'll be Apple, it'll be IAI.
Yes, exactly.
And here's my Tim Cook impression, and this is just totally off the hook, off the cuff. It'll be Apple scientists have taken the core fundamentals of artificial intelligence and weaved its magic around. It'll sound like they're inventing it for the first time.
Yes.
So we'll see. You know, I make fun of Apple a lot on this show, but you know,
it's kind of easy to make fun of because it's so, you know.
So
it's like there's a line between the way Trump describes stuff and the way that Apple does, which is like, I mean, one is better produced, but it's sort of like it's the very, very best. But they're kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You've never seen anything like this before. Nobody ever saw it.
this might be the first time we've actually linked Apple Computer and Tim Cook to Donald Trump. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's just the delivery method that, you know, they're both saying the same thing. Like, we've created the greatest thing ever, and you should buy it right now.
Exactly.
So when you think
I just did that, that's
I know you're in trouble now, Chris. So when you look at the entire infrastructure of the AI leadership, or, you know, like the companies that are at the head of the AI movement right now with generative AI, you've got OpenAI, and they've got all of this money from Microsoft. So I link those two companies together, even though they do have partnerships with other companies. And then you've got Google. And again, we're recording this right at the same time that Google's making all of its I/O announcements. So we'll talk about that on the next show. You've got Apple in the wings. They're just watching everybody. They're doing their Apple thing, which is just waiting, and then they're going to pounce when they see the opportunity. And then you've got wild cards out there, you know, Anthropic. And I just remembered that Meta, and I don't think anybody's considering that. Like, Facebook is just Facebook. Okay, here we go. Facebook is like the little nerdy kid at the high school table that wants to be friends with the popular kids, and they're just like, well, we've got this stuff too, and everyone else just looks at them going, you know, like they're just trying to steal their lunch money. Now, maybe that's just me. But remember, I don't know if you remember Meta's big AI announcements from last year when they had one of their events. Do you remember they had the thing with Tom Brady and Mr. Beast and was it Kylie Jenner? It was one of the Kardashian / Jenner kids. And like, I don't know if you noticed, but those are totally gone away. Like, you can't find those personas anywhere. Or maybe it's just I'm not actively looking for it. They, you know, on Instagram, they did integrate this, like, ask Meta AI anything on my Instagram.
Like,
and usually
you mean search.
Yeah, it's called search. And usually it's like I'm just trying to find a user to see what they've posted.
I feel like it's when there were those moments where companies were throwing crypto on their name on the stock exchange, and their stock would go up because they just said it was some type of a crypto thing.
Yeah.
Now it's just, let's throw AI on there.
Yeah. So with all these kids at the cool table, and then, you know, Meta looking in, Apple. In this analogy, Apple would be, I don't know, they would be not at the table yet, but they're ready to be the king of the table. Like, where do you see this all? Is it going to be more, or you're going to have new entrants to this, or is it just going to be, you're going to have to just either pick your favorite friend?
I think it's just more consolidation and power of big tech.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, it's like, is OpenAI, or is it Microsoft? That's just kind of funneling through, and it's like, well, we can't really. They've like what, 10 billion and more into it, you know, and so I think right now, It's sort of the classic, like, the big tech just getting bigger because they have the money and the power. I don't know how you're going to have, you know, you'll have smaller products doing things like some type, you know, and using the APIs from OpenAI or Google or whoever, creating an individual product or a services. But the mainline service that's coming is going to be those guys.
Yeah.
And it's the same battle between, you know, those battles between, like, the search versus social media versus, you know, who's going to win. They'll be in there. Maybe it'll end up being Apple using Google.
Oh boy. Oh, see, that depresses me too, because there's
me too.
I've been reading a lot of stories lately about how there's this feeling that AI is the emperor has no clothes type of situation, where the tasks that you're doing with generative AI, it almost feels like it's just a magic trick, and you're impressed by the magic trick, but not necessarily. And I think I brought this up last week too. The actual work that you're getting done is not necessarily productive unless you're using a specific tool maybe that has some of this AI integrated.
Yeah, I think we did talk about it last week. I think it's right now it is primarily a parlor trick for a lot of people. and maybe it's like filters in when Instagram first started. It's like, it's cool, right? Are you really a photographer because you can snap a picture and put a filter over it? That's kind of maybe what it is right now.
Yeah.
But what it can be, possibly, we'll have to find out. But it's the implications are pretty fascinating. But I think it could be.
And Instagram turned into a cool little app that you could take photos and put filters on. And now what is it? It's basically a vehicle for advertising for companies. And so
it's Life magazine. I mean, essentially, right? It's
but with more and more ads and more distracting things, and not actually any good photos or articles anymore.
Reader's Digest.
It is truly the new version of a magazine. But I think that's sort of where we are with AI. It's like, it is fun, it's interesting. People feel like they're being creative when they're not necessarily. It'll be like, what is the actual, for it to work? What's the actual use case from a business standpoint? It's like Facebook was, without advertising, the horrible model that took over. It was really interesting and fun and cool and way to connect, but they weren't making money. So
right.
How do you make money with AI? And that's going to be the thing. I think I mentioned early on, and maybe our first time we talked, I said it's going to, the fear is what the business model is. And if the business model is about capturing eyeballs, meaning an ad model, then you're going to be stuck with the danger of, like, it's just going to be let it go, because people will stick in for an hallucination, right? So I think that's the biggest fear is what's the model?
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that you're going to get something like, well, if you're not paying them for a subscription, it becomes something like, well, you ask it a question and it'll be like, I'll give you the answer, but first you have to watch a 30-second ad. And then it becomes like the streaming service. It's like, well, do I stick around? Do I really want to know that answer to that question, by having to watch this ad, or do I go and do what I was doing before?
Does it turn out to be something like, do you remember the Segway? I'm going to segue a little bit here, but it was going to be like the thing of everyone's going to be on a Segway. Jeff Bezos was riding around on one. It was going to be great. Is it going to be that, or it's just incredible? It can do these really great things, and it's, answering questions, rewriting something. But at the end of the day, there's no use case for it for most people. There may not be.
And the Segway still even make the Segways anymore? Do they still? I think I know that they pivoted towards some autonomous vehicle stuff, and then some go-karts and things like that.
The company was definitely sold from its original, sort of inventor, and then you can take a tour on a Segway. I know that in a lot of cities.
I can tell you I've never stepped on a Segway, but I have seen the Segway tours, and I've seen the mall cops driving around with them. And then it was always made fun of on Arrested Development, where one of the characters always had a Segway, and he could never drive it over bumpy roads or gravel.
I mean, just to get really dark, the guy who bought the company, how he rolled off a cliff on his Segway.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, okay, I shouldn't laugh. When did that happen?
Maybe 10, 15 years ago. Whoever it was who bought the company and
so not from Dean Kamen. Not Dean Kamen.
Not Dean Kamen. Okay. No. Whoever bought it from him and was turning into sort of a separate commercial company was his Segway somewhere in England along some cliffs and over the White Cliffs of Dover or something. But yeah.
I'm not supposed to laugh at that. But that is...
I know. Well, it's far enough back. Okay. It's not too soon. We can say it's not too soon.
All right. We've gone down the rabbit hole ourselves on this podcast. So let's get back to our next topic, which is it's AI related. There was a story that The Guardian had this week that said the CEO of the world's biggest ad firm was targeted by a deep fake scam. Now, the good news is that they caught this. So there wasn't any transfer of money. They did not fall for the scam. But basically, the CEO of WPP, which is a big advertising firm, his name is Mark Reed, detailed the attempted fraud into a recent email to leadership, warning others at the company to look out for calls claiming to be from top executives. Fraudsters created a WhatsApp account with a publicly available image of Reed and used it to set up a Microsoft Teams meeting that appeared to be with him and another senior WPP executive, according to an email that was obtained by The Guardian. During the meeting, the imposters deployed a voice clone of the executive as well as YouTube footage of them. The scammers impersonated Reed off camera using the meeting's chat window. The scam, which was unsuccessful, targeted an agency leader asking them to set up a new business in an attempt to solicit money and personal details. Now, Reed said, fortunately, the attackers were not successful. We all need to be vigilant to the techniques that go beyond emails to take advantage of virtual meetings, AIs, and deepfakes. So again, they were not successful, but used generative AI technology for voice cloning. Also, you could take a photo of him and try to do it. I think it's funny that they use Microsoft Teams to do this, because we just use Microsoft Teams here and nobody likes it. But again, maybe this is another step that we'll see with some of the announcements that came out from OpenAI. So
I think they were this close to going down to CVS and getting a gift card.
Because again, now we had talked about this issue on previous stories, and there was a banker in Hong Kong that did get duped,
Right.
And so they are using it's not just an email scam anymore. It's not just click on this link or send me this details or even an SMS type of scam. They're now using virtual technologies like Teams and Zoom to try to get money out of us. There's one other point I wanted to. The email listed a number of bullet points to look out as red flags. So as a public service to the rest of the viewers of this show. Okay, so if you get a request for passports, money transfers, or any mention of a quote secret acquisition transaction or payment that no one else knows about, it's probably a red flag. And then he says, just because the account has my photo doesn't mean it's me. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like, it's funny. I think I did some security training yesterday, and not this specifically, but just the same stuff you do, and phishing and all of that. And it just feels like, okay, they do it on text, on email. It makes sense that it's there, but you would think they would come up with starting with the CEO asking for something. It's a little, first of all, no one's going to get a meeting scheduled by the CEO.
Right. Because they all have assistants that do all the scheduling for them, right?
Right. Like of a holding company. And that's WPP is a holding company. So I think it's interesting that this is happening. I think it's going to be, you have to be pretty foolish to get sucked into it.
Yeah, but, okay, but wait, we say this all the time. And, again, I'm in the technology space where I read a lot and write a lot about different technology things. And it always appears to us when we're looking at these scams that we're like, how could anybody ever fall for this? Yet people do. And it's not just the grandmas anymore. It's people without outing anybody at this current company. I know that there have been people in this company before that have clicked on those links and have mistakenly done something, which is why we get those emails about, okay, everyone's got to retrain about all this stuff again.
I mean, I almost think the link clicking makes more sense because it's like almost like a dumb mistake. But to go in where you set the meeting and then you're having the conversation, it's like, sorry, I can't talk right now. You're just seeing my picture. And that, I feel like they got some work to do to get it to work better. Maybe start at a lower level,
You guys know that...
build the con up a little bit more. A lot has to go on. It's like answering the call and having a conversation and getting to the point and saying, oh yeah, let me give you my social security number.
Right.
You guys know that old MTV show Punk'd?
Yes.
They need to bring it back for AI. But it'll star like company CEOs or something.
That's not a bad idea. And we've also talked about the show. Again, a lot of these scams are focusing on CEOs and business leaders because they have more money. But I could see this working on a lower level too.
I do too.
And we've talked about, and again, previous guests that I've had on the show, we've talked about, especially, the older population, maybe the grandmas and the grandpas that are out there. You get a phone call and it sounds like, your grandson or your granddaughter, and they're typing in the response and it sounds like, you're like, oh, hey, grandma, I got arrested. Please don't tell my dad. But can you send $50 or $100 to bail me out type of a thing?
I think that's more likely. That's and that's the grandma kind of scam, but that could scare almost any of us, right? If it's done well.
Right.
The high level, the CEO, I don't buy. I think that's going to be a tough one to make work.
Yeah. I think, again, as the technology gets better and better, we have to be more aware of everything that will be out there to try not to get scammed. And I think that the best advice, again, is if something seems off, it probably is, right? Like, oh, my voice isn't syncing to my picture or my video, and I keep doing this. That's probably not really me.
There's going to start to be some requirement where you're going to have to, it's like, think about two-factor. It's going to start happening when you're going into meetings where you have to prove that you're a real person. Dance around the room, please. Show us the newspaper for today, or show us something that shows today's date.
That would certainly make those in-person meetings a lot more exciting.
Yes.
As you're walking in. All right. Chris, do you want to change your background to the other thing that you were talking about? Because this is
let me get this going here.
This is the only time I'm asking you to do a virtual background. Here we go. All right. Okay. So, for those of you that weren't in the north regions of the U.S. last week, there was a solar storm that caused the northern lights to be seen by a lot of people. My Facebook feed was just exploding those 2 days with all these people that had remembered about this or that went out at the right time. I totally forgot about it. I think I was asleep when it happened, so I missed any of those types of events. But it was this big deal, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just the thing. But there was a story that came out over the weekend. The solar storms did make GPS tractors miss their mark, which is actually the worst time of the year for farmers because this is their planting season. So farmers had to stop planting their crops over the weekend as the strongest solar storm since 2003 battered the GPS satellites used by self-driving tractors. This is according to a report by 404 Media. The issues basically struck days ahead of a crucial date for planting corn, which is one of the U.S.'s biggest crops. For parts of the Midwest, planting corn after May 15th can lower crop yields, according to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, particularly as the end of the month nears. And so an organic farmer named Tom Schwartz told 404 Media he chose to delay planting on his organic farm because of the GPS issues, but that bad weather in the forecast may delay things further. He said he uses the centimeter level accuracy of the GPS system to plant his rows so close to his tractor's path that a human being can't steer fast enough or well enough to not kill the crop. So we had covered precision agriculture about 5 years ago when these systems were first coming out. This was in a computer world. I went to Iowa and I met a lot of the people at John Deere that were revolutionizing this. And this was 5 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Very impressive. But now we're finding out that this impressive technology, if a solar storm happens, then you're all messed up and you're screwed up. So,
it's for two things. I didn't know about it. So I found it fascinating that actually that works. And it makes a lot of sense that's where sort of automated precision stuff would make such perfect sense is in agriculture, right? I also think it's funny that the one they go to is the organic farmer, which you picture this guy sort of tossing seeds on his own. Actually, he's using all this technology.
He's got the feedback. Well, again, that's why when we discovered that this technology was happening, this was, 20, I wouldn't say almost 10 years ago, maybe 2015, 2016 was when we did this report. It's using the satellite technology to it was better than GPS. It was, again, with GPS, you get like you've probably noticed this on your car or on your phone. It doesn't always it doesn't give you the exact location when you put a map over it. It gives you this range. And again, when you're driving and you don't take an exit that it wants you to take, you watch the dot as it tries to figure out where you are, right? So for precision agriculture, they use more specific satellites so that, this, and I saw pesticide systems that can determine whether the crop needs pesticide or needs water versus another plant right next to it. So that's how impressive it gets. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think just knowing that that's out there and it's what a great use of it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that surprising that affected. I'm older than you, I'm guessing, by a year or two.
Maybe.
But I was around when MTV started, and whenever there was...
I was around then too. So we're about the same age, Chris, I think.
So they actually had this, this clicked into my brain when we were talking about this. They used to show commercials or sort of announcer reads in advance if there was going to be some kind of a solar storm, because they're letting the viewers know that their MTV might be interrupted because of solar flares. So
I don't remember that
thing, right?
Yeah.
It's affecting the satellites.
Yeah. It's funny because I've seen reports about solar storms before, never thinking, and they'd be like, it might disrupt communications and some other things. And, the scientists that give these warnings, you were always like, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. It
doesn't affect anything I do.
Yeah,
so
all it does is it gives me the northern lights and I can take pictures on Facebook. But this will actually affect potential crop yields for the year, right? If
Yeah, I was just looking at the date. So, okay, it's the 14th. We're recording this on the 14th.
Yeah.
And it says the 15th is sort of the last planting date in the upper Midwest. So I'm wondering, are they out there scrambling right now, able to do that?
Well,
You know?
I mean, are the storms over? I don't even know if the storms are over. I mean, I know it was just over this past weekend, so it was like, I saw like 30 pictures that looked really cool, and then they said, well, it might happen again tonight, but then nothing else. So I don't follow the path of this. But could it also affect autonomous vehicles and autonomous driving as well? Maybe the ones that use some of these satellites, and which is leading me into the next story. So if you want to turn off your Northern Lights thing, that's fine. Or you could just keep it on. I don't care.
Yeah, I'll keep it on.
Just keep it on. All right. So, GM's Cruise division is back driving autonomously for the first time since a pedestrian dragging incident. They're basically officially back on the road and driving autonomously for the first time since one of its driverless vehicles dragged a pedestrian over 20 feet in San Francisco. Last month, the company said it would resume testing with manually driven vehicles focused on mapping and gathering road information, which are minor tasks for a company with as many autonomous miles as Cruise. But Cruise needs to show local officials that it is suitably apologetic for the pedestrian dragging incident by going slow and talking a lot about safety and trust. The company is deploying its vehicles in Phoenix, Arizona, which has long been a hotbed for autonomous vehicle testing, mainly because there's not a lot of weather in Phoenix, to be honest. That's why they're picking that. That's why you're not getting it in the Northeast in Boston. Cruise spokesperson Tiffany Testo said the company is deploying only 2 autonomous vehicles with safety drivers behind the wheel. In addition, the company has 8 manually driven vehicles in the city. And then they're going to gradually expand to include Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Tempe, Mesa, Gilbert, and Chandler. Again, all in Arizona. So autonomous vehicles had a really bad year in 2023. And it feels like the industry kind of took a nosedive. And there were a lot of people that had said, we're never going to achieve what we wanted to achieve. And there's still a lot of that doubt. But as a related story, there was a self-driving startup called Wave that raised $1 billion from NVIDIA, SoftBank, Microsoft, and more. This is a British startup, which makes me think that maybe with these 2 stories, maybe we're going to see another small surge or some development towards autonomous driving. So I wanted to hear, Chris, your opinion on this. Northern Lights, Chris.
Which Chris?
You.
Northern Lights.
Yes.
I got you. I think I think that there will be, we're a long ways, I believe, from autonomous driving just because there's humans out on the street. So it's combining the two is the issue. That's what happened in San Francisco. It wasn't necessarily the autonomous car that caused the problem. I think there was a hit and run, but it said it didn't stop, right?
Right.
So how does it work within the world of humans? But I think this might be an area where the mix of sort of AI plays a big role in this, and I think that's part of it. I mean, if NVIDIA is putting money into it, it's got to be a tie-in to
right. The company that was invested, this British startup, uses this thing called embodied AI technology, which features AI that can understand and adapt to unpredictable realities in the physical world. For example, a car powered by this technology driving down a residential road would need to be equipped for unpredictable situations such as jaywalking. And I think in the early days of some of this autonomous driving, again, I covered the robotic space for a while, and you would see these companies that would come out, and this would include drivers, but also those little delivery robots. Yeah. And you would think that they had cameras in them, and the processing for where to go and what to avoid and not get run over by someone was supposedly supposed to be in the robot. But I think a lot of companies just deployed a little tiny human being. No, they had. Wouldn't it be great if there was like a little tiny human inside the little robot that was driving the car? But that would be even more amazing technology than the robot itself. Like, yes, we've developed shrinking technology to reduce the size of a person and then put him in this robot that will deliver your burrito. No. Okay. So what they did was they had virtual drivers. So you would have the camera feed, and then there would be someone back at headquarters actually driving, so that felt like a Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain type of a situation.
Right, and then you're dealing with the latency, so the reaction is like, well, I did see the jaywalker, but my reaction was after I hit the person.
So I don't know how much autonomy a lot of these vehicles had. And now maybe it's coming out that they didn't have as much autonomy as we thought they did. And now people are saying, oh, well, now we've really got AI on the robots and the network connection is fine because it's now all edge processing instead of, going to the cloud, which was the bigger problem, 5 years ago.
So maybe it's something as simple as, there is sort of this goal to get to some type of autonomous driving. Like, let's say, go back to the tractors, where there's a way that it could make sense, transportation. And how do you get there? And there's been a lot of money invested in it, and it's not quite working. And then suddenly we've got AI and saying, hey, maybe there's an opportunity. You've got a company over in England saying, well, we have this AI because it's AI, give us money. And
right.
it might be the thing that gets us there. I mean, there are a lot of things about autonomous driving that make tons of sense. I think for trucking, it's huge. I think it's
especially long haul trucking where you're going from state to state.
There's not enough drivers. That's an industry that can make sense. Certainly in this country, because we're never going to be a pure rail country.
Right.
We're not built.
Right.
So it makes sense. And if they could find a way, I like the idea. I think that it makes this investment is smart because the two things combined. I don't know about Cruise. I mean, I think Cruise is what GM or maybe it's a consortium.
It was a division of GM at one point. I don't know if they still are. I think that's in the story if they still are.
In that, they're just trying to make good on and see what they can do. To me, the more interesting one is the investment with the British company that's saying it's got some form of AI, and I think that's where you'll see it going.
And I think it'll also then be the business model will go away from trying to sell you or me a car. Like, I'm never going to own one of these things for myself, but they're selling them to companies like Uber and Lyft with in this theory of robotaxi. And I think this is what Tesla's doing too. They're trying to sell these autonomous cars to taxi companies so that they're just on a ride share / basis. So, because I've even seen ones that they were trying to sell you an autonomous car, and then if you drive to work and then park it in a garage, that car could be used to give taxi rides to other people in the area as long as it's back in the parking spot by 5:00. And I could just imagine that could just go horribly, horribly wrong for many reasons.
I still think that it works when it's a choice, when there's an area where it's just autonomous cars.
Yeah.
I don't think the mix works. It's like Uber now. You get into Manhattan and it's like, the idea was, it's a bunch of fallow assets. We'll use them and make money off of it. And it just created a gridlock, right? Because suddenly the cars that used to be parked are now everyone's driving.
Right.
So I think if you don't have it as all autonomous cars, you're just going to have gridlock. If they're all autonomous, they're all speaking to each other, and you're not going to have that issue.
I would love that on my commute home, which would be, but again, people have told me that we could have an autonomous vehicle future if we just gave up driving, if humans gave up driving. And that's never going to happen. I've talked to too many people. They're like, you'll have to take the keys out of my cold dead hands before I give that up. And I know Director Chris is now looking at me like, he's never going to get into an autonomous car. Have you been in one, Chris? Living out in Silicon Valley?
I have not. I'm on the waiting list for Waymo. So, but I will definitely do it.
So wait, there's a waiting list for you to be allowed to go into a car?
Yeah. So sort of a test that, some of my colleagues, I just signed up for it recently. That's why.
Okay.
But I can go with a friend. So I'll try it out. There was I had one option a couple of weeks ago. I was offered, hey, do you want to take a Waymo? And it was literally like a block and a half. And it was just so we could do it. And I went, that's kind of silly. If I'm going to do it, I'd rather take it across the city. But I see them all the time, and I'm a motorcycle rider. So when I'm riding around, there's always this sort of is it seeing me? If I get nervous enough about any driver.
I've ridden in one when there's been a safety driver, but I've never been in one that did not have a safety driver in it. And again, this was in Las Vegas where you went in a block, basically. You just went around a big square.
Well, the Waymo cars they're all over the city in San Francisco. You'll just see them just going around, and I'll pull up to an intersection and I'll see the car stop and I'll look totally empty and just stop, and then it keeps going, and I'm like, I'm going to let you go first.
See, they should do is they should put dogs in the car. They should just put a dog in the front seat, and then
I like a cat.
Or a cat. You could choose when you're on your app. You're like, do you want a dog driving or do you want a cat driving? And then you could interact with the dog or cat. I don't think the cat would really care. But
cat would be like up on the dashboard.
Right, but like, why not? And that would freak out everybody else on the, all the pedestrians as they're going up to the intersection and they see a dog like this. I think that would be better. All right, we're going long on this one, I think. All right, last topic, which is there were two stories that made me think that people just don't want to work anymore. So bear with me on this logical leap, okay? So first there was an article in the Wall Street Journal from a month ago that said a new study suggests that people are basically going to start retiring when they're 62 versus 65. And then there was another recent press release from another group that showed the same thing, that basically expectations about people's retirement age have gone down over the last 10 to 15 years. And I think they're trying to discover the reasons why, like why not wait until 65 or later? You get more benefits if you wait until retirement. There's the whole Social Security angle of it and 401ks and all that other kind of stuff. So that's interesting enough. But then there was another story that said, where was this one? Oh, that 81% of young people say a 4-day work week would boost productivity, according to a new survey from CNBC and Generation Lab. Basically, they believe a 4-day work week would boost their company's productivity. Now, if you take those two stories together, it feels like, oh, people just don't want to work anymore.
Yeah, people just don't want to work.
And I think do people want to work? I mean, you could say, is that when you say anymore?
Well, there's always but Chris, you and I are of a generation where, we're adults and we have responsibilities.
Yeah.
So we've accepted the fact that we have to work. Now, luckily, I think you and I are in our careers where we actually enjoy doing the work that we do. So, there are some times where I have meetings that I don't want to go to and have those types of work things. But for the most part, you're happy in your job, right? And I'm not saying this because you're someone listening to you.
No, I'm very happy in it. I feel very fortunate, and I feel fortunate for the career that I chose and the thing I've done. I think that this is a result. I mean, is it COVID? A little bit, because I think that COVID made a lot of people realize that how much of their day is wasted. Because when you start working remotely and you're able to, and you actually work, you get things done much quicker without interruptions. So I think there's some of that saying, I can get the stuff done that I need to do in less time. So therefore, well, what if I could have 4 days? And so on the shorter work week, I think it makes sense that people would say I'll be more productive, because it's just going to be, you'll work, those days you'll work the full 8 hours, I guess. And then have time off. I get it. I mean, I think it's more of this idea of, does it pay off for so many people to be putting in, tons and tons of hours? And
I think if you had a company that you're working 5 days a week and you've got a certain number of meetings and there's some time for you to think and all this other stuff, consolidating, everyone thinks, oh, well, I waste so many times in meetings and all this stuff. Why don't we just scrunch that? I still think you would be stuck with all of these meetings and the really bad parts of some of these work things, that you wouldn't necessarily be improving your productivity. I think most people's productivity would go up if you could just get rid of the non-productive parts.
Yeah, so. I would agree that, like, if it's just the same thing and everyone's in an office, let's just assume it's not remote, you're just going to get less done. I mean, 4 days is 1 day less.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're not going to be productive and it's not going to work. For some companies it could, but the reality is if you're working, even if you're just putting a solid 6 to 8 hours of real work those days, and it's also, and this also
feels like this is a knowledge worker type thing where it's people that go into an office that have, meetings and Zoom calls and email. Like the construction worker, or a sales clerk is not going to, because they're getting paid by the hour. So they're never going to go to a 4-day work week, right?
No.
Or if they do, that's what,
Then they lose money. Then it'll still be a 5-day work week. It'll just be like split shifts or something. But I think the idea that people don't want to work that you said, I think that they're trying to, I think maybe there's an adjustment of how important it is to work so much, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too was that surprised me about that 65 to 62 retirement age was that maybe it's my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, and I am sarcastic and cynical about everything. So it felt like with all the news where they talk about Social Security, never going to have enough money, I've become of this attitude of I'm never going to retire. Like I'm just going to keep working because at some point they're going to pull the rug out from me and they're not going to give me any of that money. All the money I've been saving in my 401k is somehow going to go away. I talked to my financial advisor about this and she's like, you are just the most paranoid, insane person I've ever met. So I never, like every time I get near a finish line, they move the finish line or they move the goalpost of what I'm about to score.
Yeah, I'm Gen X as well. And it's funny because when you said that, it's like, it feels like they've always pushed it back. And suddenly to hear people saying they're retiring early.
Yeah.
Thinking about that is bizarre to me.
Yeah.
That people are making that decision.
And then my advisor says, well, why do you feel this way? I go, because I was age 18 in New York State when they raised the drinking age from 18 to 21. It was like I was like 2 months away from being allowed to drink as an adult at 18. And then they're like, nope, you got to wait 3 more years. Now, and again, in hindsight, yeah, that probably was a good idea because you don't want 18-year-old Keith drinking at some point. And it's not like I didn't anyway. Like you found those loopholes in college kids, things like that. But again, that's why I feel this way. So it did come to a shock to me to see some people suddenly going, oh, I'm not going to work until I'm 70 anymore. Now I can work, at 62. And I think the reason was because people have made all of this money with 401ks and other retirement plans that maybe they want to take advantage of that and enjoy retirement rather than wait until they're 65 or 70 and not know whether they'll be able to enjoy it.
And maybe they just hate their jobs. Right? I mean, you just said we both like what we do.
Yeah.
But if you didn't and you're like, okay, I've got to do this thing I hate every day.
Yeah. Am I going to want to do it in 10, 15 years?
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I haven't been able to figure out yet is why certain groups are pushing this, because I know that in Congress, Bernie Sanders has introduced this bill to try to get people down to get the standard work week down to 32 hours. The New York Mets owner and billionaire financier Stephen Cohen believes a widespread 4-day work week is on the horizon, and he cites the rise of AI and generally lower productivity on Fridays. Which is true. I think, after 2 p.m. on a Friday, I get no emails from any colleagues or even the people that are pitching me ideas. So I use that time to actually become productive on other tasks that I have.
Didn't Keynes say that at some point we would be where the work week would be like 8 hours or 10 hours because it would be, we'd be so efficient and modernized, and it's always. They say these things every once in a while, but it just keeps adding on.
Right.
I think maybe it's like, okay, it's going to be a 32-hour work week. You'll get it, great, and then you'll find out you're actually paid, 20% less.
Or they, again, this is another example of people misinterpreting a sci-fi movie, or everyone talks about the WALL-E movie. Do you remember that Pixar movie? Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
And so that showed the robots doing all of the work, and then everybody else was like this giant fat person on a couch, basically consuming entertainment or whatever on a couch. Because again, if I only had to work 8 hours a week, but still get paid the same, what am I going to do with that extra time? I think for a large majority of us, we would become those people, which is bad. I'd like to think that, I would get out more. I would walk more. I would go do all of these other things. I would have more time for my family. But I think in the end, I would end up just falling back into some of my lazy tendencies. Is what I'm going to say.
How do you pass the time? Right now, you've got more time to pass.
Right, and so I don't understand why why this billionaire is pushing this and why the government wants it. I think it's because I don't know. I haven't been able to figure that out yet. So. Chris, do you have any ideas? I mean, you're usually a tinfoil hat guy with this 4-day work week.
I mean, if you think about it, if they're going to try to implement AI more, then I think we're definitely going to get closer to a WALL-E type world. Robots and machines doing most of the work, and we'll just sit back and enjoy our 5th, 6th vacation of the year.
And then we're all in the VR headsets, and that's we're all and then at some point all of these billionaires will be making more money somehow. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes down to how do we increase profits and productivity. It's like, I just don't believe they're going to go to a 4-day work week and say, oh, and the same pay.
Right.
It'll start at the same, and they'll say, well, you know what? You're in 20% less, and it'll just get changed, and you're stuck in, right?
Yeah.
But you have more time off.
Yep.
All right. I'm sure we'll be following that as well. And we've now definitely gone over the time limit for this week's show. Chris Shaw, again, thanks for joining us. We got one more week with you. Always a pleasure to talk to you about tech stuff.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, add any comments you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.